Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the virtual plant clinic. Today, Dr. Lester is not able to be here, so I am filling in for him once again, and I thought it was so much fun the last time that I hosted and I came down to the actual physical plant clinic here in Hernando County and crashed Bernie's time while he sits here volunteering this morning. Well, you sit here, you're pretty much here all day on Thursdays, right?
Yeah, I'm here till 3 o'clock.
Wow. And he does get lots of visitors. So for the next hour, they're unfortunately going to be, I guess, shut out or something, unless Teresa screens them and finds they're so interesting. And if they want to come and be online with us, I am Lily Browning. I'm the regular co-host here. I am the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator. Dr. Lester doesn't always get that right, but it's close enough. He does a pretty good job. I work with Hernando County Utilities. I work with the water department, even though I partner all the time here with the county extension office. They don't pay me anything. So the water department pays me, and I actually have probably one of the best jobs in the county, certainly one of the most fun. And I used to work here at Extension. And when I did, I had a clerical position here, and that is when I met Mr. Bernie Bathauer over here, and we actually took Master Gardener training at the same time. That was in 2005. And then he would hang out every Thursday. He's been doing this for years and years and years. Good morning, buddy. And we learned a lot together. We really did. People would call in or come by with questions that might stump both of us. And instead of doing my work, I usually ended up helping Bernie try to figure out the situation. And that's how you, end up in a position like mine. I guess Dr. Lester is sneaking in as an audience member this morning. Good morning, Bernie. Bernie, yeah, he says go, Bernie. Good morning, Bill. I'm not sure if I can let you in. Do you want to be let in, Bill? Just let me know, and we can figure that out together. So we have long-term Master Gardener Bernie here, and you've already had some people come by this morning. So
well, it's been a very interesting morning. I've got a lot of phone calls to take care of, but
you got to show that where they can see it.
Had a question on holly plant, and the plant's a little sparse, and the biggest reason is it's been growing in semi-shade, and it would be a little happier if it was getting more sunlight. But hollies will tend to grow in low light conditions and be a fairly decent plant. They're a little leggy when they do that. This particular plant has some fungal problems.
Yeah, and see what we have.
Yeah.
Here. See all those
little
and how spots. Can we tell that's a fungus and not a bacteria? Got some good pictures here.
Well, one of the nice things about that is that the spots cross the main rib. Bacterial spots don't tend to.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Cross veins, and they tend to be wet. And in this situation, it's all dry. And
it goes to both sides.
And it goes anywhere. It doesn't have to stay in just a certain amount of cells. So.
And they're round, right?
Yes,
that helps. It usually bacteria is going to be like a, non-shaped, just like a blob or something, maybe more angular. And did those yellow halos mean anything?
Well, these are all identifications, and it depends on the fungus. If you take this and put it under a microscope, you find that there are some spores basically all over that leaf that have not penetrated. I looked at it earlier to see what the extent of the damage is. This is probably excusable at this point. The majority of the plant doesn't have a problem, and the leaves that do, with the exception of this one little group here, which are obviously gone, are not really all that bad. I wouldn't recommend doing anything. They could use some Bacchanal or some.
That would be the best solution.
Just clean that
Cut
up.
it off.
But
or Daconil, you said?
Yeah, Daconil is a wonderful product. The nice thing about Daconil is it's a general purpose fungicide. You can use it on pretty much all your ornamentals. You can also use it on things that are food plants, and it has a low latency period before you can eat the food. So it's not one of those dangerous chemicals that you need being a full rubber suit and a respirator. It's available very easy, and it's pretty effective. It's one of the good things to have in your bag of tricks.
Arsenal.
And if you do have fungal problems, that'll usually take care of them. Just about anything.
You know how you spell that?
Daconil.
Onil. And is that the name of the? So it looks like I'm Bill, but I'm not. Is that a brand name or is that the name of the product?
That is the name of the product
of the fungicide. So you might find it. So you're going to look for that in the ingredients, basically.
You know, I'm not positive on that. Okay. That's one of those things that I've recommended Daconil for 15 years. And you go to the store and you say, I want Daconil. It's probably the number one selling product. I don't know.
Yeah, but that is a fungicide.
That's not the actual chemical.
Oh, okay.
But that's the name for that particular chemical. Okay. It's like 2,4-D. Right. 2,4-D is not the name of the chemical.
That might be the formulation.
2,4-D is a word that long.
Yeah.
And
so that's the nickname for it, basically. Good morning, everybody. Bill does not want to join us. He wants to prune his palms. So now everyone knows what he's doing today. I could have covered for you saying you were in an extremely important meeting, but time off is important as well. And it doesn't seem like Bill and I's schedules are matching up very well for these Thursday mornings. But if you look on both of our Facebook pages, we did a class together, a short one, impromptu, on what to do after the freeze. So you can see we're not mad at each other, we're not avoiding each other. And hopefully next week we'll be back here, same place, same time. Good morning, Lee. We were talking about you before the video started. So that shows, when you're a regular, when we're talking about you. But Bill forwarded the email to me about your lychee. And we both, Bernie and I, decided we don't know nothing about no lychee. It's a South Florida. I don't know anything much about any tropical fruits. But I think Bill already answered your question in that you have this, what was it, an Eranos Mite? Or your friend has an Eranos Mite, and that it's been a problem off and on, apparently, in Florida. They thought they eradicated it in 1957, then they thought they eradicated it in 1993. It seems like it's making a comeback again in South Florida. But I believe he sent you the University of Florida link to share with your friend of what kind of chemicals, I guess, to use if your lychee has mites. So BB is talking about chloroanthophyll. Maybe that is a brand name.
There we go.
Is that the brand name?
No, that's the
chemical. Okay.
Chlorothalonil.
Okay. PJ has a question here. After the freeze, uncovering everything, and now I have fungus among us up the wall. He has a lot of fungus. She has a lot of fungus. What to do now? Well, PJ, I don't remember exactly where you live. I always tell people to uncover their plants. I'm thinking you live in Pinellas County, but I could be wrong about that. Uncover your plants as soon as possible. I mean, they're probably okay in the 40s. Marion, oh, well, I was off by 4 or 5 counties. So you were further up north. You probably got zapped pretty well. How long did you have the covers on? That's kind of the question, because.
And what kind of plants? So this answer is going to depend on what kind of plants. So
and
we need to know that.
Yeah, and Lee said yes. Dr. Lester sufficiently answered her questions. Yeah, if PJ can answer us what type of plants, also what type of covering. If you use plastic, off and on with temps under 40, okay, what type of plants were you covering? If I remember right, you are already in a kind of in a microclimate with a lot of trees. So I might not have gotten as cold there, and shade also could have been an issue with the fungus, especially after you covered it. Sheets and hospital blankets good with straw around them. I'm sure the straw is yucky because, but that's just part of the decomposition phase. You can take the straw and throw it in your compost bin. Let us know what plants you covered up, and then I think Bernie will be able to assist you better in answering that. Was it hibiscus? What was it? I know I have some burnt hibiscus that looks pretty dead. And my fire bush, of course, it looks like someone set it on fire.
They'll come back.
They'll come back. Well, I know the fire bush will. The hibiscus, we're kind of new, so we'll see. But they usually do come back. And we talked about this the last time we were together. And then Bill and I also did that. It's also on Hernando County Government YouTube, or go to my Facebook page or Hernando Extension's Facebook page. It's a quick class. It's not an hour long or anything, where Bill and I talk about what to do after the freeze. And a lot of the advice we give you, even though people don't like this, and I know it's hard. It was hard for me this weekend to follow my own advice about not cutting back the old, dead stuff. And I haven't on most of my plants, but I think you make a judgment call, because we could have another freeze. PJ, you can certainly have another freeze maybe through April 15th. We're not really safe up here till probably April 3rd, April 5th, somewhere in there. As warm as it may be. You know how Florida is. You don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. So today it's going to get in the 80s, isn't it? But that doesn't mean in another week or two we won't have some other deep freezes. We're not clear of those till the beginning of April. PJ, you may not be clear of those till mid-April. They're up in Ocala. So what we say is when you prune, that encourages new growth, which is more susceptible to another freeze. And another thing that the old dead stuff does is protect the new growth that's naturally going to try to come, even if you didn't force it. That also, you got to look at the type of plant that you have. I was looking at some sages. Well, when it's dead up here, that's really on a stick. That's really not going to do anything for the new growth that's going to come from the bottom.
That's correct.
So I went ahead and kind of cut those, and I just laid them on top of the ground. We'll protect you this way. And my neighbors don't have to see, stalks. But I have this, I got it from the Master Gardener Nursery, that purple, it's like millet, tall, grassy type of, and they're dead. And I'm going to let them stand like that, until beginning of April.
Yeah, the plants with green fleshy stems, holding a lot of moisture, tend to rot extremely quick, like within a couple of days after the frost damage. They have a yellowish.
And that's what PJ color has. She has a croton.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what she mentions. Heirloom and one of kinds in this collections. Crotons are very, very frost or cold sensitive.
Yeah, probably the best bet is going to be cut them back. I mean, I hate to tell you that because we would normally wait longer, but in that situation, the ones that have turned yellow
and they're goopy,
yes, get rid of them. And if they're goopy to the ground, you've got 50-50 shot they'll come back. Go ahead and clean them down to the ground. Get rid of the plants because they'll just smell worse. They have to dry out almost completely before they become fit to be around. So,
and St. PJ is from Fort Lauderdale, so moving to the Ocala area or Marion County has been a shock. Florida's a big state. If you think about from top to bottom, if you picked up Florida and then put it like a Georgia, you could probably get like at least up to Virginia.
mm-hmm.
So you realize Georgia to Virginia is a huge difference. So think of Florida that way. Fort Lauderdale to Marion County is like the gateway to North Florida, as far as I'm concerned, or the gateway to Central Florida, depending which way you're going. It's a big difference.
It's farther from the south tip of Florida to the state line than it is across Georgia from Georgia north-south. So that means that you've gone from the mountainous area of Tennessee to North Florida in the same kind of distance you're traveling in Florida. So it's a very big change. And the microclimates are so varied here that, we're 9A, but we aren't really 9A for most of the county. The part of the county that is near the coast, they're a good 10 degrees warmer.
Mm-hmm.
If you go 30 miles south of here, there's a 10-degree change.
But my friend in Newport Richey, you know how many times I hear that? Because they talking about the tropical plants that their friend in Newport Richey has. Newport Richey is a little bit further south, and it's on the coast. And that's a big difference from if you live in Ridge Manor and have a friend in Newport Richey. I moved just a short distance, 12 miles, like 15 years ago. Can you believe it's been that long? I moved from interior Hernando County, right in the city of Brooksville, to what we call the Royal Highlands, Weeki Wachee, 12 miles west and about a mile east of 19. Huge difference, just that 12 miles from an oak hammock to a sandhill type terrain.
Well, the town of Mazarek here in our area was settled by Czechoslovakians that came here with the original intent of growing oranges. And if they had been 5 miles away, they could have grown oranges. But the area they're in is just enough colder than the rest of the county that they couldn't get oranges to survive. And it's very difficult to explain that to somebody. But this state has trees that when you go out in the woods, you'll find places where there's a very slight elevation change, maybe only a foot, and it will change the tree population entirely because the trees that grow at the bottom of the hill won't grow a foot higher. And we run into that all the time. The Chinsegat Nature Center here has 2 different kinds of pine trees totally separated by just a foot.
Right.
So.
And I was, we had a outdoor rain barrel and compost bin workshop at Fickett Hammock Preserve, which is up near me, up on Centralia. And somebody else mentioned, Crystal, the master gardener, mentioned the same thing that I notice every single time. You are coming, say you're driving east on Centralia, you can see where suddenly you turn from sandhill dryness to oak hammock. Everything, the trees are bigger, the woods are thicker. It's like, boom, it happens right away. And I always assumed it was actually the town of Centralia that came in, like the Lorax, and literally, and they did, took all the cypress and pines down. It was like a 20-year boom town and left. And I thought that history caused this, but Mike Singer, who is our environmentally sensitive lands specialist, told me, no, this is natural. This is, just how the topography changes. Just, right there from sand hills. And, you have a lot of your sand pines and a lot of open areas like we're used to in the Royal Highlands to right about the Parkway, a little bit further east, boom, you're in a thick oak forest and much lower and flooding and all of that. And there's that you've heard of Dry Creek Estates in that area, and there's a road, Dry Creek Road. There is literally a dry creek that, runs through that area naturally too. So let's see. BB says there, Plumbago looks fried. Yeah, I know.
Plumbago will come back.
Yeah.
That's one that just wait until mid-April, cut away the dead stuff. It'll come back. They do real well here.
PJ says, I'm leaving straw open, but around the plants in case of future snaps. Straw seems to be an issue with moisture. It would be. I would see where it would be. I actually would pick up the straw and throw it in your compost bin. I think probably mulch and even just the coverings. I don't know that the straw did you, much good. It could have. But Corey mentioned up here that in the 80s, getting in the 80s was garbage. I agree, Corey. It's too early for that. Let's see. Corey's in 9A in Pasco. And they, in a cold spot, and they hit 19 twice. Oh, yeah, it happens. And Corey always tells a story about Miss Sargtown. That cold spot from there extends to his area of Pasco. Okay, let's finish the story of Miss Sargtown. So they, tried about 2 years to have citrus, didn't work out. Was that the end of the story?
Well, no. They decided to raise chickens. And interestingly, they did well enough with the chickens that they were the center of egg production for the state of Florida.
The world.
And
that's what they claimed.
Well,
the chicken capital of the world. I lived there for my teenage years.
Did you see any chickens?
Of course I saw chickens. Yes. They're not there now. That kind of, again, time progresses. As he said, yeah, the Czechoslovakians, they came over and then they came from New York and down here to start, they bought the land and we're going to start their own town, named it after their president, Thomas Masaryk, and in the 40s. And really, they were, their heyday of chickens lasted until about probably mid-1990, mid-90s. So yeah, I was there during the chicken production time. And I know if Dr. Lester is listening, he's still laughing about that. I worked on the chicken crew a couple of times. I had friends who had the nursery. So they would raise 1 million chickens, it seemed like, until they were layers. And then they would be put in trucks and gone to the actual, more of the chicken farms. So once a year, all of us friends ran over there to watch all the new peeps come in. So that was a fun, cool day. And they just, they didn't put them in cages. The peeps just ran all free in their big chicken houses. We only had a few backyard chickens at my house, but that's the story of Masaryk, but it's kind of just more like a suburb of Spring Hill now. Will air kill the fungus?
No.
Nope, fungus is there. There's a fungus among us. You gotta get rid of all the material with the fungus on.
Most of the funguses produce a fruiting body and then a spore. And the spores have the ability to hang around for years. A lot of the funguses, these little spores are windblown and they find the right conditions and they take off and they go again. A lot of times the plants and the funguses coexist until something happens to tip the balance one way or the other. A real good example is take all root rot fungus. Uh, at least in our county, it's probably 100% in everybody's lawn. I mean, it's there.
Yeah.
And if you have St. Augustine grass, as long as the grass is healthy, it's never a problem. The two coexist and they're perfectly happy. But if you stress the St. Augustine, the fungus takes over.
That's odd that you mentioned that. This
Oh.
is, oh my, how nice that you brought up St. Augustine. Was brought into Bernie this morning. And actually, he asked me what I thought was wrong with it, and I didn't, look that close. I just went take all root rot because it's so prevalent. This actually doesn't have take all root rot because let's look at, see the roots. I don't know how well, but
all the little hairs are there. Everything that it needs. That plant is actually very healthy for its size.
The roots are white. They're not black.
Unfortunately, those roots are about 1/4 or 1/5 as long as they should be.
Let's measure them with this wonderful ruler. This is a special edition Lily Browning design ruler, which helps you measure. I don't know if I'm showing you the right way. There we go. Helps you measure how long your grass should be. You see that star that indicates 4 inches? Let's see where this grass. It's not quite, barely
About
1.5.
Maybe
like
1. I would give it a 1.
Okay.
With a few blades mowed at 1.5 inches. This blade of grass is really sad. This is what happens when the blades aren't long enough to support the root structure. The root structure is not well.
This root structure that we're looking at, even though it's healthy because it's white, it should be
6 to 8 inches
down
long.
To here.
Yeah.
Yeah, not this. And what do Dr. Lester and I preach to you all the time about? I'm cleaning up the dirt. I'm just all the time on all of our classes about mowing height.
By the way, if you can manage to find Lily someplace, she gives these away. So this is a freebie if you take the time to run her down.
Or you can come here because Bernie has a box full.
I do have a few here yet. So
yeah, don't let him fool you.
You can get one free at the Hernando County Extension.
Yes.
You get a lot of great advice here also from me.
Yes.
And Bill.
And when you take a rain barrel course, I usually give you a goodie bag and throw in one of those too. It's a great tool, even if you have somebody else mow your lawn and they're like, yeah, 4 inches, 4 inches. Yeah. Let's see. Now, why is that so important? Why do we harp on mowing height?
Because St. Augustine grass requires 4 inches of blade to support a healthy root structure. That's the minimum. Anything less than that, you're starving the root structure. You do that, and there's these little fungus things sitting around just waiting for it to be stressed so they can attack. So there's a great lesson. If you mow your yard too short, you should stay up nights waiting for the fungus, listening, seeing if it's attacking your lawn. If you hear a munching sound, get out there with a hammer and start beating on those little guys.
PJ wants to know, is this weather in this area fairly common? Absolutely. This was not shocking. We have winter in Central Florida.
We have had a change in the past 10 years
so that people who've only lived here that long don't know we have real winters here.
Yeah, the winter has changed. We now have frost into April. We never had that before.
We could tell you March 15th on the dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's now running 3 weeks later for winter. But it's also running later for to start. We used to get our bad weather would start sometime around Christmas. Usually the week of Christmas would really be a seriously bad.
That's when if you look back, a lot of the citrus freezes, devastating citrus freezes were around Christmas week.
But that is moved into January and February. February is much worse than it used to be, and
the thing is, though, because Florida weather is so changing all the time. I always say we have a series of 3-day winters here in Florida. So, we'll have a cold snap for 3 days, then it will get warm for undetermined amount of time. Then we'll have another cold snap for 3 days, but it can get darn cold. 17 is not unheard of. It's not anything to be overly shocked about, really. But you're snug in your beds, but of course your plants, need to worry about it. When I was just up in Pennsylvania for about a week and a half, every time I go up there in the winter, it's, kind of fascinating to me because I moved to that good old Massart town when I was 11. So there's, a lot of things about up north winter I've forgotten. But I've been in Florida so long, and I go up there, I'm like, I can handle this. This is fine. And then 3 days later, I'm like, isn't this over with yet? I'm done with the cold now. Doesn't work that way up there. Let's see what other kind of questions we have. What value falling leaves add to the compost pile? Carbon. That's the value it adds to your compost pile. Now, green leaves are going to add nitrogen. The frozen leaves or the leaves that are falling out of your live oaks, all that, absolutely carbon. And your compost pile needs both. Carbon is the food, and nitrogen is the energy source.
The leaves also add some of the minor metals that you need. There's a magnesium atom in chlorophyll. So when the
you just know everything.
So when you use the leaves, you're adding back some of the minors that are difficult. In fact, in palm trees, there's an interesting thing that the palm trees do. They take all of the movable elements out of the bottom fronds and move it into the new growth. That's why you should never cut anything off of a palm tree that's got any green on it, because it's actually reabsorbing everything, and when it gets done, there's not much left. So palm fronds don't do much good for you in compost.
Well, they can if you they can help you build a tent for aeration.
Well, okay. but leaves off of an oak tree still have quite a few minerals. They also have tannic acid, which tends to lower the pH of your pile, which will eventually end up in lowering the pH in your soil, which is a good thing. We're a calcium-based, limestone-based soil here, and the pH is a little high, and a lot of the plants would do better if it was slightly more acid, and that's what you end up with when you're using the leaves. Plus, you got to do something with them. You can mow them, turn them into powder, and leave them on the ground, or you can put them in your compost pile.
Or you can
just don't bag them and throw them away.
Right, don't bag them and throw them away. Or you can leave them alone, because there's all sorts of pollinators and insects and things making their homes under there too. Corey said he talked to a very old man from a large landowning family from Pasco who said he didn't like Shady Hills in the Sark town because it smelled like chicken poop. Well, it did. That's true. Mostly on 41 as you drove past it, because that's where the main Hernando egg was, which is now, what is it?
It's some kind of a racing thing.
Yeah, I just lost the name of it. It's a recreational venue now. Everybody knows it, but Leadfoot City, that's it. He took over that old Hernando Egg building, and that if life has nothing, it has change, and in Florida, that change is always on supersonic speed. Everything's always changing here. But yeah, in the 80s, it did smell like poop. That's true. Can't argue with that. But let's see. Monique says she lives in downtown Brooksville, and all of her arboricola are fine, and she's a lot of them. Downtown Brooksville, yeah, because you got all those live oaks, all those, holding the warm air in, all the tree cover,
Mm-hmm.
the microclimates.
And it's a lot of it, unless you live at the top of the hill, you've got the airflow going. So if you live at the very bottom of the hill, you probably are colder than everybody else. But other than that, it's got a nice gentle rise. All the heat just runs slightly uphill. And I would say Brooksville's probably 5 degrees warmer than the airport.
It is, for sure.
Yeah.
And even in the summer, because that's those trees provide shade, which make you feel cooler. I think it's more psychological because it also holds the humidity in, I think, too. PJ has a good question. What about that straw in her compost? Is she going to pass that fungus on if she tries to use it later?
No.
Because it's not a chemical, it's a natural occurring thing that's going to...
Well, the thing that happens when you compost is that the microbes raise the temperature, and because they heat it up, they tend to get rid of just about everything that
I'd shove it in like the bottom of your compost, or like in the center of the pile, put the other stuff on top of it to make sure those microbes just eat that all up, and all the fungus and everything. We tell people not to throw in plants that have been chemically treated, because those chemicals, herbicides, even chemical fungicides or whatever, have a longer shelf life. It depends on what it is. And the chemicals especially, because herbicides especially, like if you decide to put your lawn clippings in there, and then you use it on a plant bed and don't know why all your plants died, it could be because that herbicide has such a long life, it actually is still active. But a naturally occurring fungus that occurred because your plants got goopy, like I said, put all that straw in the middle of that compost pile, and it should be heated up, and the microbes will do a good job eating it.
And you have to remember, most of the microbes that killed or that destroyed that plant after it died are not microbes that are killing the plant when it's alive. They're sitting there waiting for it to die. They're strictly, I can't think of the word I want to, for things that only work on the dead.
Decomposers, or...
Well, they are decomposers, but they just don't affect the live plant. I mean, that stuff was there.
It's not their job in nature.
Yeah, it was there all the time. So
someone bought white hibiscus from the nursery. Will it come back too?
Hibiscus?
Let us know. I'll let you know if I don't have a white one. I have red ones. We'll have to wait and see together. It could. There's so many.
Is it in the ground or in the pot?
That's a good question.
If it's in the ground, I would think it would probably come back. If it's in the pot, I would think it wouldn't.
Correct. And why is that? Because our ground, we didn't get, you're going to, argue with me, but we didn't get that cold, or for that many times. Therefore, our ground probably stayed in the 50s. So we don't have permafrost here. Our ground doesn't freeze. We can bury people all year long. Strange way to put it. Our ground is not going to freeze. All those roots were pretty safe in a nice 50-degree balmy environment, even though their leaves and stems got zapped by the cold. So the roots are going to get to work and say, "Oh, let's grow some more." Probably that's what's going to happen. with your hibiscus. If we got down to, in the lower teens or something, that might be a different story. But it's always a wait and see. It depends on your microclimates, all of that. And as he said, if it was in a pot, it did not have that nice warm protection from the ground. So it could very well be a goner, but don't throw it out. Just wait and see if it starts to come back. It'll things are already coming back. I see new growth happen right away. But another thing you can do, if you get tired of waiting, near the bottom, scrape the stem with your fingernail. If it's green in there, it's going to come back.
I had a plumeria that was in a pot, and it got killed 2 years ago. And being the really active person that I am, I never got around to throwing it out. It was sitting there and it wasn't hurting anything. And it holds the record for the longest time before a plant came back.
Oh, wow.
17 months before it started to grow again. But it did come back.
See, there's a lesson. A lesson in patience, a lesson in laziness. There's life in there.
If you dig
life finds a way.
If you dig something up and you take your thumbnail and you rub it and it's green underneath, you shouldn't have done that.
Plant it, cover it back up and plant it.
So you really need to wait. If you think it's gone,
I didn't say to dig it up. I said near the bottom.
Yeah.
Near the ground.
But a lot of plants take 4 to 6 months. And, if it's a plant you don't mind being a throwaway, go ahead and dig it up and put something else in. But, if it's a nice plant and you liked it, give it every possibility. Go ahead and water the spot occasionally. Treat it like it's a seed and you're wanting it to grow. So.
Yep. PJ says, from the freezes in South Florida in the 1990. I think that was 89 that we had the freeze here. Lots of 32-year-old people was what she's saying. In 89, I remember we had a pretty cold freeze here. That was one of the devastating citrus freezes here in Central Florida, and they actually did rolling blackouts to have enough electricity for everybody. And I had already done my baby boom, but that was 1990 because he was about 10 months old. Okay. And he was already born. So, but I kept calling them saying, I have this baby and you keep turning my electricity off. And they said, well, bundle him up.
The 89 freeze, I bought the place that we've got because it was an old orange grove. And I thought that would be the greatest thing in the world to have a little house in the orange grove. And I bought it in the summer of 89, and Christmas 89, we had the freeze and it killed all his trees. So my beautiful orange grove was gone. But the Claremont, we had 3 major freezes in the 80s. And Claremont, the first one was in 81, and almost everybody replanted. And then it did it again in 83, and a lot of people replanted. And they had a couple of minor freezes that did a lot of damage. And then the 100%er again in 89, and nobody replanted.
Yeah, well, they replanted houses. So that's our story. When I used to go to Disney World, I saw nothing but orange groves. Now, when you go to Disney World, you see nothing but housing developments. The Claremont's still a nice town, but yeah, everything, everything there's a season. So.
By the way, the season for oranges, we just had the worst citrus harvest we've had since World War II. The greening, if we can't come up with a solution to it,
I was trying to figure out what World War II had to do with it. Workers, I guess. workers
Yeah.
to work it. I was
Yes.
like, what? The oranges don't go to war.
Well, we didn't have the acreage then either. You know that I came to Florida in '58, and my uncle was building a housing addition in Orlando.
Mhm.
And there was a canal from Orlando over to the coast that one of the contractors had put in.
Winter Park, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they charged everybody to pump their water into this canal. So they pumped the area they were going to build in for 2 years to get it dry enough. And they eventually put a couple thousand houses in, and the houses were $8,000 and $9,000 with a pool. So that tells you how long ago that was. Orlando was 50,000
There were little
people.
houses, and people were happy with their 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses with the pools and the flamingo screen doors and the terrazzo floors.
Yeah, terrazzo
Yes,
floor.
yes. Vivi has a very good question here we need to address. How do you correct a lawn that's being mowed had been mowed 4 inches all its life, but is now 1.5 of stolons and 2.5 of grass on top? Just let it grow.
No,
No?
that's a problem.
Oh, the stolons
The
on
stolons
top.
are the problem.
Okay, yeah, that's
That requires verticutting, and
that's how you get thatch, if anyone wonders.
that's what thatch is. All those little stolons. But there's a machine. It's like a lawnmower that the blades are turned vertical instead of horizontal, and it goes through and it chops all the stolons up. It's tremendously damaging to the lawn. When they get done, you almost want to cry because it looks so bad. But
Yeah, when you write the check.
But you have to do that. If you don't get rid of the stolons,
Is there any way a homeowner can do it, or does it have to be?
Yeah, you can do it. You can go rent the
Okay.
machine. The problem is an average little lawn, like a 50 square foot lawn, is about 3 dump trucks full of that stuff.
Wow.
It just keeps coming and coming and coming.
So it's
Maybe
worth,
it's not quite that
hiring
bad.
someone because you got to take that junk away.
Yeah, hauling it off is the big problem. It's not the verticut, but that's how you rejuvenate the lawn, and it's a start over. And generally, the reason for that is the lawn was over fertilized. That tends to cause the stolons to just go berserk. A St. Augustine lawn runs about 18 inches in a season, in a year. And if you fertilize it heavy, the stolons get really big, and eventually there's so many of them that you start developing problems, diseases, and everything else. It feels spongy. The lawn is no longer healthy, and the trick is to minimally fertilize to keep the stolons down, keep the blade from growing as fast.
What would happen if you just totally ignored that, or like it was a house that was abandoned or something? What would eventually happen there?
If it was just totally abandoned, in about 10 to 15 years, it would need to be verticut. But the lawn would probably be happy. The St. Augustine would get very, very long. The blades would have root structure like you can't imagine. It would be a very happy situation. Unfortunately,
if you did not verticut it,
if you don't verticut it,
it'll strangle itself out.
It eventually. Well, it starts developing diseases. The thing about it is, you're building a layer that nothing really wants to grow in it.
And
so the root structure is going from the stolons down. So now we have root structure that's exposed. So
okay. Kelly wants to know, what do you recommend I use to cover my plants that are cold intolerant. She purchased some blankets from Home Depot, and they did not work. I'm not sure what blankets are. It sounds like plastic blankets, and any covering with plastic is never a good idea.
Well, if you use plastic, you need a framework so that the plastic
Right, so
can't touch anything.
Right.
But the idea is to build a tent, and you want to cover as much area under the plant as you can. It's the heat from coming up from the ground that's going to protect the plant. So
the blanket isn't protecting it. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not a mammal. Like, I have this sweater on to hold in my own heat that I produce. Plants do not produce any heat. We talked about a little bit ago. The roots in the ground were okay. Why? Because that ground's going to stay around 48, 50 degrees. So what you're trying to do with a blanket is tent in that radiant heat from the ground. Yes.
Yeah, if you could just put a pole to hold it up and put a big plastic thing out away from the plant where it never touched, put some bricks or something around to hold it and make it a teepee type.
Right,
thing.
like a greenhouse.
Yeah.
You make a little greenhouse.
Anything that gives you the ground area providing the heat and retains the heat. So most cloth things work well because if they touch the plant, they don't conduct the cold and damage the plant where they touch it.
Like plastic would.
But sometimes when you have high humidity and cold, the every place it touches, the plant's got dew on it, and it burns there because the dew moistens the cloth, and the cloth conducts just like plastic does.
The ideal is that you create a tent that never touches the plant.
That's correct.
But sometimes that's not possible, and if it has to touch, then use cloth.
That's also correct.
Maybe a sheet may have been, better than anything containing plastic. Old sheet. Somebody, I think PJ was using hospital blankets, things.
But the other thing you have to remember is that what's going to happen is the temperature is probably going to go down to about 40 degrees inside that tent when we're just at freezing. So you're not saving a tremendous amount. If you've got plants
like PJ's cardboard palms. See, she brought those probably from Fort Lauderdale, and I don't know if they.
Yeah, well, see, cardboard palms here are barely good at 35 degrees. So they start getting damaged before we get frost.
And she's in Marion.
So yeah. So she's got plants. That's another thing. Always buy the plants from the area that you came from. If you live in Marion County, buy your plants from somebody that grew them in Marion County.
Well, she might be actually saying she used cardboard, or maybe reading it wrong. She used cardboard to cover plants.
Cardboard
that's a
boxes,
great idea.
Cardboard boxes work great.
Yeah, especially if you have one big enough to not touch your plant. That actually is a very good idea. Sorry, I misread that. I was thinking cardboard palms. We talked about two different things. Yes, cardboard, as long as you put something on it that it doesn't blow away. Okay. What was the question? But what kind of plant was that? It's in the ground, her hibiscus. So it should be okay.
Yeah, it'll probably come back.
Yep. Oh, PJ's stressed about her stress plants. She's an experienced gardener, but feel totally stupid here. Well, as we reminded you, you're in a different world. And you know what? Marion County has a fantastic extension office. It's over on Jacksonville Road, I think, by the fairgrounds. Stop by there sometime, and they're probably going to be having their spring fling in the park pretty soon. There should be master gardeners there to talk to, and they'll really, guide you in. They're more experienced in how to grow in Marion County than we are.
What I love about that thing is they sell all those plants up there, and they sell things that if you put them in the ground in Marion County, they're not going to live at all. I mean, you can.
Well, go to the master gardeners then, specifically their tent.
it's a neat place if you want to buy plants that you have to baby. I did that for a long time. I bought plants and uh, I kept them in pots, and when it was going to be cold, I put the pots inside. Well, it got to the point where that just became too much to do. I had
Yeah. Oh, I'm
30
very
pots.
much, I'm a tough love situation out there.
Yeah,
Now.
well, now I've got one plant I put in, and that's it.
Yeah.
All the rest of
I
them
brought in a
either
night
survive or die.
blooming Sirius that somebody gave me. And it's still on my kitchen table because I just like, I'm not going to keep taking you back and
Those
forth.
are pretty.
Yeah.
That's
We're going to wait until it's not going to freeze. I've only got a few minutes left. We've got a real good talkative group today. Oh yeah, those covers were plastic. So only use plastic if you have built up a frame system that's not going to touch the plants. Plastic touching the plants can, just takes the freeze right into the rest of your plant. Monique says her lawn seems to be as healthy and no longer seems to be as healthy and have the worms it used to. She never uses chemicals with the exception of synthetic turf fertilizer. What's going on and how do I build back the soil?
we need a whole bunch of information.
Yeah.
There's what kind of grass is it, and how high is it mowed, how often is it fertilized?
Well, you know what I'll do? Let me give you, after we're done, call this phone number here that I am putting in the chat, 352-754-4433. Ask Teresa to talk to Bernie. Say, I want to talk to Bernie. And he can find out all those details from you as well. Buddy used hot hand heater pockets, and he's in Tallahassee.
That works great. That's a really smart move, and I have heard of people doing that, and that's a brilliant idea. It works great. I like
Great
that.
job, yes. And Diana, we haven't heard from her in a while. She's master gardener. She used dried bamboo stakes to make a teepee and then old fitted sheets over it. Fitted sheets are a great idea. They already help you, and protected her 2 in the ground plumerias. It's a great idea. There's all kind of creative ways.
Plumeria is a plant that really rots in a hurry.
It does. Yes.
If it gets frosted.
Kelly's saying in her community they had lots of Thai plants and they all look seriously damaged. I'm sure they were. Should we replace them or wait to cut them back? It depends. Are you talking about in a public area? I would say wait, but maybe, if it's in a public area, your community might not want to wait. But
on Thai plants, it'll take about 4 weeks and they'll know whether they're...
Yeah. Thai plants really should have been in pots and brought in. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, but they're kind of good. I mean, it's they'll tolerate right down to 32 degrees hot as opposed to 32 degrees cold. So
what does that mean?
There's a mammoth difference.
Well, explain that.
The thing about it is you cool water down, when it hits 32 degrees, I don't remember the exact number of calories, but
the calories it puts out in that change.
It gives off a calorie for every degree it drops down. One cc of water, 1 milliliter. Mm-hmm. Well, when it gets to 32 degrees, to go from 32 degrees hot to 32 degrees cold, it gives off like 50 calories instead of just 1. Okay. And it didn't even change temperature. The temperature stayed the same, but it gave up that much.
Which is why those igloos of ice that the strawberry farmers use work.
That's exactly why they work.
But that is not recommended for the homeowner. We are almost running out of time, but you were talking to me about your greenhouse woes. PJ brought up that she's getting a greenhouse. She's making a greenhouse and going to get pots for her special tropical plant babies. I went to the College of Central Florida, PJ, and I took horticultural classes up there. You remind me so much of the professor because he pushed those zone limits up there as well. So tell us about
Well,
about greenhouses, and then we'll have to go.
It's kind of awkward to talk about this particular greenhouse without mentioning a company name. But there's a company that sells tools that has a greenhouse that's very popular. The greenhouse has some serious problems. When you construct it, the first little breeze that comes along blows it apart. Now there are some things online on how to put it together and stop it from blowing apart. But the important thing is, after you do the put all the little screws in that it takes to hold it together, that if it's sitting out in an exposed area, it's still going to blow apart. The plastic sections disintegrate. The company does not sell replacement parts. The only way you can get new plastic is to buy another greenhouse, which I did. The first job I did, it lasted about 2 weeks and it blew out the panels. I put screws in all the panels and it lasted about 3 years, and then the sunlight destroyed the panels. So I bought a second set of panels, and we had a big wind go through, and it wasn't rebuilt for 2 weeks, and it tore up my new panel. So if you buy one of these greenhouses, the kits are relatively inexpensive. They're about $600. It's a beautiful looking thing. It needs to be protected. If you can put it behind a garage or something like that where it isn't direct wind, that's fine. But why spend that much money for something that isn't going to stay together? So.
And here's information. I just figured out how to do this fancy banner like Dr. Lester does. So if you have questions, especially if you're here in Hernando County, keep Bernie busy the rest of the day. He's here till 3 o'clock. Give him a call, 352-754-4433. Here is my email, LillyB, LILLYB, at hernandocounty.us. Where did Bill's go? I just saw his.
Go to one of Lily's programs, get a free ruler. I mean, can't make a deal any better than that.
Well, I put Bill's email in the chat too, so email him first before me. No, wlester@ufl.edu. We've gone a little bit over time. Thank you very much, PJ. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bassam, I think I didn't get a question. If able to answer one of yours. But you'll either have to come back next week and ask again, or email one of us, and we'll be glad to help you. And Dr. Lester should be done pruning his plums by next week, playing in his vegetable garden, and we should be back together again. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day. And Corey, don't get too hot out there. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.